Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Apologies for the delayed start. There has been a technical issue, and as a result, we had to ensure that all the audio video issues are fixed first. Now, if I'm clearly audible and visible, please let me know in the comments. Can you please let me know in the comments that if I'm clearly audible and visible so that we can get started with the discussion? Yes, is it clearly audible and visible? Okay, great. Everything looks good. So, good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. In today's Delhi edition, we have some very important and interesting articles. I have taken a total of 9 important articles that are relevant for the exam. So we will comprehensively analyze all these articles so that you can be completely prepared with regard to today's newspaper and you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. And if you guys are liking our initiatives, please support us with your likes and comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So, before we start the discussion, I have one important announcement. Those who are looking to enroll for our Platinum program, this is the right opportunity and probably the last opportunity. For those of you who don't know what is Platinum, Platinum is Unacademy's dream project. It's a platform where the students get to directly interact with the teacher, keeping the camera on during the lectures. If you want hand holding throughout your preparation, if you want the teachers to solve your doubts, mentor you, guide you throughout your preparation, check your answers, give you detailed feedback, then this is the program for you. So the batch has just started and we have last few seats remaining. Those interested can enroll because very soon the enrollment is going to close. Then if you want the PDF of this session, please scan the QR code on your screen and join my Telegram channel because after the session, I'll be sharing the PDF over here. So let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at the first article. The first article is from the front page itself. This article refers to the ongoing tensions between India and Bangladesh. As you all know, since last year, Bangladesh has become a challenging neighbor for India. Ever since Sheikh Hasina was toppled from power and her government, Awami League government, was thrown out. Since then, the interim government, which has taken control under Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus, has been turning increasingly hostile towards India. And this has started affecting the broad relationship between the two important South Asian neighbors. See, Muhammad Yunus recently made a very controversial statement. He was visiting China to meet with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping, and he appeared to make a statement on India's northeast. He said India's northeast region is landlocked and it is dependent on Bangladesh for sea access. This is a topic we have discussed a few times. In fact, I've done a separate animated video as well on this important topic. So today, we have another breaking development which has further derailed India Bangladesh relationship. So, Muhammad Yunus, he pointed out on Chinese soil that India's northeast is landlocked, meaning it is dependent on Bangladesh to access the sea. He also claimed that Bangladesh is the sole guardian of the ocean, which means Bangladesh is the one which controls Bay of Bengal through its ports such as Mongla and Chittagong. Bangladesh indeed has great access to Bay of Bengal, but it appeared as if Muhammad Yunus was trying to leverage this and use this to the disadvantage of India. Because Muhammad Yunus was encouraging China to play a bigger role in tapping India's northeastern markets. See, India has always been very sensitive regarding any kind of Chinese involvement in the northeastern sector. Because since 1960s, China has been involved in destabilizing the northeast region by even sponsoring insurgencies against India. So for Bangladeshi leader to invite China to India's northeast without India's approval or permission, and to make this controversial hostile statement on Chinese soil, stating that Bangladesh is the only guardian of the sea, that India's northeast is dependent on Bangladeshi ports, this was interpreted by India as a hostile move by Bangladesh. Over the last 8 to 10 months, we have already had multiple issues. India, especially, has been concerned about how Bangladesh has been handling the transition. India has expressed serious concern about the mistreatment of religious minorities in Bangladesh. Minority Hindus, Buddhists, and even few sects of Muslims have been targeted by radical fundamentalist organizations like the Jamaat. And it appears that Bangladeshi government is encouraging this trend. And Bangladesh has also gotten closer to India's hostile enemies, including China, Pakistan, and as well as Turkey. Bangladesh has even made a big purchase of Turkey's Bayraktar drones, which Pakistan has also bought, which Pakistan recently deployed as well against India during the latest conflict. And there are reports, very disturbing and concerning reports, that Bangladesh might have invited China to renovate a strategic air base near the Siliguri corridor, which is a choke point for India. I hope all of you are familiar with the Siliguri corridor. It's the narrow land corridor in West Bengal, which is sandwiched between Nepal and Bangladesh on both sides. It's also called the chicken's neck of India because it's a vulnerable choke point, a strategic choke point for India, which is our only access to the northeast region. Since 1960s, India has been very insecure about Siliguri corridor because if it were to be blockaded, let's say hypothetically by a Chinese invasion, India would essentially lose access to the northeast region. So, from a military and strategic perspective, Siliguri corridor has been very, very crucial for India. We've been trying to secure the Siliguri corridor. Now, Bangladesh has apparently awarded the contract of renovating a strategic air base of the Bangladeshi Air Force to China, which is just located few kilometers from the Siliguri corridor. So, all these developments have led India to conclude that Bangladesh, under the interim government, has become increasingly hostile to Indian interests. Now, please understand why this is so significant. India shares the longest land border with this country. The border length is around 4,096 kilometers. And this has always been a delicate, sensitive border. The border has many natural gaps, it's highly porous. And when we had hostile governments in Bangladesh previously, in 1970s, 1980s, etc., we have seen that Bangladesh had given a space for insurgents and terrorists to operate against India. Bangladesh historically has been a safe haven for anti India insurgents and terrorists, and as well as pro Pakistan elements. This border has been a major concern for India with regard to border security because Bangladesh had failed to check illegal migration, which had a huge impact on the demography of Northeast India, creating socio-ethnic tensions in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura. And it even became the root cause for certain insurgencies in Assam and Tripura. Bangladesh had also failed to curb the security threats emerging from cross border crime, which is organized crime such as drug trafficking, then human trafficking, arms trafficking, and as well as cattle smuggling. So, India had managed to deal with these threats effectively only when Sheikh Hasina was in power and her party Awami League was in power. Because both Sheikh Hasina and her party Awami League were always seen as pro India in their inclination. Sheikh Hasina had successfully kept Pakistan away from Bangladesh, and thus she had secured Indian interests. Sheikh Hasina had decimated the support base for terrorists and insurgents and ensured that India's security concerns were addressed since 2009. That's why having Sheikh Hasina and Awami League government in power was the best case scenario for India. So now with the interim government and its clear pro-China, pro-Pakistan inclinations, rise of radical fundamentalism, repeated hostile moves by the Bangladeshi government and the security forces, India has been very, very cautious when it comes to dealing with Bangladesh. So as soon as Muhammad Yunus made this controversial statement, when he said that Bangladesh is the only guardian of the sea and India's northeast is dependent on it, and he invited China to play a role, immediately India responded by closing the transshipment facility which we had extended in 2020. Now, what is this transshipment facility? See, India has set up several land border points along this border with Bangladesh. We have few integrated checkposts, as you can see in this map over here, or as we call it ICPs, which is a type of a land port managed by the Land Ports Authority of India under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So such land border points are present even along the borders with Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and we have planned many more as well. Recently, you might remember that India has shut the Atari integrated checkpost following the Pahalgam attack. We have completely shut border trade with Pakistan by closing the integrated checkposts. So, on the Bangladeshi border as well, we have around 4 vital integrated checkposts, which are advanced trade facilities, which will facilitate the movement of trucks, goods carrying trucks. It will facilitate the movement of people as well, and thus promote cross border trade and cross border movement. So, for example, in West Bengal, we have Petropol, which is one of Asia's largest land port and one of South Asia's busiest land port. In Assam, Meghalaya, and Tripura as well, we have such ICPs located, such as Sutarkandi in Assam, then Waki or Davki in Meghalaya, and at Agartala in Tripura. So, all along the border, across these border states, India has set up these ICPs to step up border trade with Bangladesh. Apart from the integrated checkposts, India also has land custom stations, which are minor border crossing points to promote local cross border trade. Now, these border facilities which India Bangladesh had created, it was very crucial for Bangladeshi exports. Bangladesh would not only export to India by using these integrated checkposts and land custom stations, it would also import a lot of essential goods and items from India. In many ways, Bangladesh was dependent on these cross border facilities. That's the reason why Bangladesh became India's largest trading partner in South Asia. In our immediate neighborhood, Bangladesh has been our largest trading partner. We were even considering a free trade agreement to further boost this trade relationship when things were good with the Sheikh Hasina government. But now everything is turning around. So, given the hostility of Bangladesh and its repeated instigation, what India did was we cancelled the transshipment facility which we had opened in 2020. So, what is this transshipment facility? In 2020, India had allowed Bangladesh to use Indian seaports and airports for its exports to third countries. Since Bangladesh was struggling with port infrastructure and logistics, India opened up the land ports. We allowed Bangladesh to make use of the integrated checkposts and the land custom stations to bring the goods to India first and then export from Indian seaports and airports to third countries, let's say in Europe or United States or even Nepal and Bhutan. So Bangladeshi exports became dependent on India. Bangladesh was heavily relying on these land ports of India to bring the goods to India and use our seaports and airports to export it further to other countries. So India decided to shut the transshipment facilities completely. So in retaliation, Bangladesh responded by stopping India's yarn exports. India had significant yarn exports to Bangladesh, and this was completely stopped by Bangladesh, especially via the land ports. Bangladesh issued an order just a couple of weeks ago stating that India's yarn exports will only come through the sea route into the seaports of Bangladesh, not through the land ports. So, land trade or cross border trade came to a complete halt as far as the exports between the two countries were concerned. Now, India has taken further steps. India has announced a complete stop of exports of certain items and import of certain items so that there is an economic cost which will be imposed on Bangladesh for its repeated hostility against India. So India is hitting Bangladesh where it really hurts the Bangladeshi economy. I hope you know Bangladesh is a leading textile producer, right? Even Western companies, apparel companies depend on Bangladeshi textiles, Bangladeshi garments. In that regard, India, Bangladesh are in competition in the garment or industry sector. But India had until now facilitated Bangladeshi garment exports. We had given them transshipment facility as well. But now India is closing these routes one by one. And now India has decided to stop these exports via the land ports completely. Only the seaports would be open for Bangladeshi trade. Seaports like Kolkata, Mumbai. Only through these seaports of India will India receive any Bangladeshi garments and Bangladeshi goods. But the land ports are being almost completely shut. Because see, Bangladesh has become very aggressive. We have received reports that when Indian trucks enter Bangladesh in the last few weeks, they are being aggressively checked by the Bangladeshi security forces without any reason. They are deliberately delaying the clearances. They are deliberately holding Indian goods in custody in order to punish Indian traders and the Indian economy. See, generally in trade and diplomacy, it's always reciprocity. It's always tit for tat. You give what you get. So, since Bangladesh was being aggressive, trying to block the trade routes, trying to restrict the movement of goods, India has responded with equal measure. The Directorate General of Foreign Trade, the DGFT, under the Ministry of Commerce, has already issued an order to all the ports in the country and the concerned state governments to ensure that we block out these critical exports of Bangladesh. We are mainly targeting their ready made garments, even rice and other goods and commodities which we can produce locally, domestically. For example, it could be bakery, confectionaries, or beverages and basic goods which can be produced in the Indian market itself. We need not import this from Bangladesh. So, such goods are being banned for import, and we are blocking Bangladeshi exports to India. If ready made garments have to enter the country, they have to come only through the seaport in Kolkata and Mumbai, where substantial checks will be done by the concerned authorities, by the customs, by the security forces, the Coast Guard, the intelligence agencies, etc. Because Bangladesh is resorting to such measures against Indian exports to the country. So, this marks a low point in India Bangladesh relationship, and that's why the topic is very important. The trade tensions are escalating day by day, and it is a reflection of the diplomatic tensions which persist. So, Bangladesh's growing proximity to China, Pakistan, and its tolerance of anti India forces and elements is what is pushing India to take these drastic steps. And we are seeing one of the lowest points in India Bangladesh relationship in the last 20 plus years. So, please keep track of these developments. We will keep covering this as and when there is some new development. So please go and watch this video that I have done, a very short 8-minute video, which is a animated video to help you understand the significance of these ports and how a strategic game is being witnessed involving India, China, and Bangladesh. So I hope everybody has understood this. So please take up a practice question for your mains answer writing practice. The increased hostility of Bangladesh towards India has impacted cross-border trade. Examine in detail. Now, use the points that we have discussed and try to build a good answer for this. Try to ensure there's a proper structure and a logical flow of thought in your answer. Now, before I proceed to the next topic, there are few important locations I would like to point out which can be relevant for the exam. So please make a note of this. The article is mentioning these locations in today's newspaper. India has land custom stations at Fulbari and as well as at Changrabanda. These are two locations in West Bengal along the borders of Bangladesh, where we have two land custom stations, which has facilitated cross-border trade. So, movement of Bangladeshi exports to India will be restricted through these land custom stations. Then, apart from this, we also have Petropol, which I showed you on the map, and we have other important checkposts such as Hili, then Sutarkandi, Davki, and Agartala. So across all these land ports, India is completely shutting off the movement of goods in order to punish Pakistan, in order to punish Bangladesh economically. So let me know what you think about these developments. Is it really concerning? Will we see a further decline in India-Bangladesh relationship? Or is there any opportunity or scope available to try and improve it through diplomatic negotiations? Now, before I start the next article, I have some very important message for 2025 aspirants. If you are looking for mock tests, even 2026 aspirants can take it up so that you can practice full length question papers. Today, the 18th of May, Unacademy will be conducting the last mock drill. At 9:30, the first paper has already started. You can still enroll and take it up. And afternoon, we have the CSAT paper, which is scheduled. So this is an opportunity for you to practice full-length question papers and test your preparedness. Now let's look at the second article. We have a column on page 14 that examines Trump's approach towards India, Pakistan, and Kashmir in particular. It actually provides a very deep, insightful approach. We have covered this topic multiple times in the last 2 weeks, but this article does contain some new insights. So, with regard to the recent India Pakistan conflict following the Pahalgam attack and India's launch of Operation Sindoor, as you all know, the US appeared to mediate. Though India has rejected these claims, India has said US or any other country, they did not mediate. The ceasefire was worked out between India and Pakistan through the DGMOs. That has been India's official position. Even the foreign minister Jaishankar has recently denied any direct involvement of the Americans. But the US has insisted that it played a big role in the mediation between India and Pakistan. Now, how do we know this? Now, if you look at what Trump has done, what Trump has said, at least it appears that US is assuming its role in mediating between India and Pakistan. India might be trying to put an end to it. India might be denying such involvement, and we might be warning the US to stay out of India, Pakistan, and Kashmir issue. But Trump and his administration are repeatedly pushing, because before India, Pakistan announced the ceasefire, before India's foreign secretary made it public, around 30 minutes before that, Trump went on social media on the Truth platform and he claimed to have negotiated the ceasefire. He called both India and Pakistan as great nations, thus equating India and Pakistan. We were expecting US to criticize Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism, but Trump, through his public statements, he equated India, Pakistan, and he even said through an interview and through his recent public address in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and he delivered one more interview to a Middle Eastern news channel, where he repeatedly claims that he threatened India, Pakistan with complete cutoff of trade, used trade as a bargaining chip, as a leverage. That's what he's claiming. He said that I've informed both India, Pakistan that if they don't end the conflict, we are going to cut off the trade. He has even sparked alarm by stating that the N word was at play during Operation Sindoor. He said this just 2 days ago in a press interview given in the Middle East. The N word, meaning nuclear weapons. He has indicated that the conflict could have possibly escalated to the nuclear level. While there are no confirmed reports from the Indian side or the Pakistani side, Trump has been making these claims. The US administration has been trying to claim credit, and Trump has even offered to mediate over Kashmir. Now, this stand of Trump and his administration is very, very problematic for Indian foreign policy, because this approach of Trump and US has crossed all the red lines for India. The Lakshman Rekha that we had drawn with regard to India-Pakistan issues and Kashmir issue, US has crossed all of it. Trump has crossed all those red lines. So now it is time for India to push back, to redraw these red lines and remind the US that India does not tolerate, India does not accept any kind of third party involvement between India, Pakistan, and over the Kashmir issue. Now, why is this so important? Let's trace the history here and let's understand a couple of important concepts. See, for a very long time, the Western powers, they had always hyphenated India and Pakistan. Now, what do you mean by hyphenated or hyphenation? It means they saw India, Pakistan as equals. Let's say US leaders visited Pakistan, immediately they would visit India as well. They would go to Islamabad, next day they would come to Delhi. Or they would come to Delhi, next day they would go to Islamabad. Now, this was a diplomatic, symbolic gesture that they are looking at India, Pakistan as equals. And essentially, that would bring the Kashmir issue into play. And they would consider the Kashmir issue as a conflict, as a disputed area between India, Pakistan, over which Pakistan also has claims. This is contradictory to India's standard position. India has made it very clear since a long time that Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of Indian territory. And it's Pakistan which is in the illegal occupation of POJK, that is Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India has said that there is nothing to discuss about Jammu and Kashmir. If you have to discuss, the only issue to be discussed is POJK, the area which Pakistan has illegally occupied. But Western powers would not appreciate India's approach or India's position. They would often see India, Pakistan as equals. They would, whenever they would negotiate with Pakistan or India, they would treat both of them at the same footing, at the same level. Now, this was very challenging and very difficult for India, especially during the Cold War period. After decades of effort, India had managed to achieve a dehyphenation through its phenomenal economic growth post 1990s and India's rise as a significant military nuclear power which could stand up to China. We finally managed to dehyphenate ourselves from Pakistan to set ourselves on a different footing as compared to Pakistan. This position was made very clear. So, US and Europe, when they would deal with India, Pakistan, they would not equate us, they would not treat us at the same level. They would treat India as a significant strategic partner, whereas Pakistan as more of a dependency. Now, this was always to India's advantage because India's long standing position on Kashmir is that we will not tolerate any third party involvement. India has always opposed the internationalization of the Kashmir issue. According to India, there is nothing to discuss about Jammu and Kashmir. According to India, it's a settled matter. Jammu and Kashmir is obviously an integral part of India. If at all we have to discuss something, we'll discuss with Pakistan only about POK or POJK. And we don't want other powers to get involved in that. So, this is a standard position of India, which has served India's interests. It has helped keep Kashmir out of international debate. It has helped in keeping any actors away from the Kashmir issue. Now, why is this position so important? Some of you might be wondering that why India insists that this is our red line. Why don't we allow third party involvement? What's wrong with that? That's why you need to understand the history of this. In 1947, when Pakistan made the illegal attempt, pushing a tribal invasion backed by its armed forces, and it captured parts of Jammu and Kashmir, and later J&K would sign the instrument of accession under Raja Hari Singh and would fully integrate and merge with India. Thus, India went to war with Pakistan to liberate J&K. We retook some of the captured areas. But before the war could escalate further, then Prime Minister Nehru took a very controversial decision. PM Nehru called for a ceasefire and took the matter to the United Nations. So, because of this decision, PM Nehru is still criticized by the opposition that he made a big blunder. He internationalized the Kashmir issue. But however, Nehru had a strong defense. In fact, he informed the parliament when Kashmir issue had been taken to the UN. PM Nehru addressed the parliament explaining the rationale behind taking the issue to the United Nations. Now, please understand this carefully. There is a nuanced argument involved here. See, at that point, India was in no position to escalate or continue the war. India was newly independent. We had many other pressing challenges and problems. Insurgencies had broken out in Northeast, the Naga insurgency. Several princely states were not willing to merge with India. We had not even created a strong Indian Union. A constitution had to be drafted. Our economy had been plundered by the British and it had collapsed. We could not even feed our people. We didn't have basic industries. There were pressing economic, political, and social challenges. The partition had widened the communal divisions. So India was dealing with some incredible challenges at that point, and war was the last thing that we wanted. So the first war, the 1947-48 war, was imposed on India by Pakistan. We had to fight the war to protect our interests, to protect Kashmir, to take some of the areas. And when it was the right time, we approached the UN hoping that UN would be fair and neutral. But Prime Minister Nehru was very clear that when we approached UN, we were not asking for any UN mediation. That was not India's request or position at all. Our only intention was to ensure the end of the conflict and resolve the issue through talks between India and Pakistan. We didn't want UN to get directly involved or any Western power to get directly involved. But what happened later was one of the greatest betrayals for India. United Kingdom in particular, which always had this pro-Pakistan bias and an anti-India bias, would misuse its role at the UN Security Council as a P5 member. And along with United States, they would side with Pakistan and push a position which would hurt India's interests. They would push for a UN monitored ceasefire which is something India always wanted to reject. In fact, when Prime Minister Nehru agreed for a plebiscite to be held, India was very clear that plebiscite will be held only if Pakistan vacates POJK. Only if Pakistan vacates the occupied area, then we'll hold a plebiscite, which of course never happened. As Pakistan would never give up its occupation, India would never hold the plebiscite as well. Since then, Nehru was clear that he did regret taking the matter to the UN. The intention was something else, but later geopolitics took over. Western powers interfered, the UN overplayed its hand. And since then, India was trying to keep the UN and these Western powers out of Kashmir. And Pakistan was always trying to capitalize on this. Even now, Pakistan's sole intention is to internationalize the Kashmir issue. And throughout each and every conflict, we have seen this recurring. In 1965, if you remember, during the war, India managed to deliver significant blows to Pakistan by opening multiple fronts. We managed to defeat the Pakistani design to capture Jammu and Kashmir again. Eventually, it was the Soviet Union which interfered, pushing for a ceasefire between the two sides, and it even mediated the Tashkent Agreement. You might have seen the shots that I had done on the Tashkent Agreement. So, in the Tashkent Agreement, the USSR did involve itself. So, this was also a case of third party involvement, which was not very much liked by India. Though USSR was a reliable, trusted partner, any foreign involvement, be it American or British or UN or even the Soviets, India never liked the third party involvement. So we were waiting for an opportunity to keep the international community out of India Pakistan relations and particularly the Kashmir issue. This opportunity presented to India during the 1971 war, when India delivered a crushing defeat to Pakistan, broke Pakistan into two parts, liberating Bangladesh. So, following this, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi capitalized on the opportunity, and at the Shimla talks, when India Pakistan ended this war through negotiations at Shimla and signed the Shimla Agreement, we ensured that Pakistan would accept no third party involvement over the Kashmir issue or any bilateral issue. We not only pushed Pakistan to recognize Bangladesh as a new independent nation, because we held all the leverage on Pakistan. Pakistani forces had officially surrendered by signing the instrument of surrender. Then Pakistan was under India's pressure because we held 93,000 Pakistani soldiers as POWs, as prisoners of war. Using this leverage, India managed to pressurize Pakistan to accept Bangladesh as a new country and agreed that Pakistan and India will respect each other's sovereignty. That we will not allow our territory, our soil to be used to target the other, which means Pakistan will not meddle and interfere in India's internal matters. Pakistan will not sponsor terrorism against India. It will not try to exploit the divisions in India. That is the commitment we extracted. But of course, Pakistan has repeatedly breached that. And we also made Pakistan to commit that any bilateral issue, be it Kashmir or any other issue, we will settle this bilaterally. It will be just a India-Pakistan negotiation with no scope for third-party involvement. And to remove the role of the UN, because through the Karachi Agreement of 1949, the UN had given itself a role in Kashmir. Following the ceasefire of 1948, which the UN had brought into effect, the UN gave itself a formal role in Karachi Agreement by deploying a UN military observer group to monitor this temporary de facto border in Jammu and Kashmir, which was then known as the ceasefire line between India and Pakistan. Now, what India did was, through the Shimla Agreement, we eliminated this role of the UN military observer group by renaming the ceasefire line as line of control. That's how the LOC was born. So it was a very clever diplomatic move by India by making a legal technical change, by changing the ceasefire line to line of control, and Pakistan accepted this. Pakistan had to accept it. So when India Pakistan both decided that this de facto temporary border will be now LOC, not ceasefire line, it automatically eliminated the role of the UN military observer group. Because if there is no ceasefire line, what will the UN monitor? So this clever move by India took out the third party role. UN was taken out. Even though the military observer group is present on both sides of J&K, UN has no role since 1972, and India has ensured that. because Pakistan agreed that there is no ceasefire line. This would be the line of control now. Pakistan committed that there won't be any third party involved going forward. We will discuss bilaterally. And we have always insisted on this position, be it during Kargil. Let me tell you what happened in 98 and 99. This was a very difficult, challenging period for India. The then Vajpayee government had to deal with an incredible challenge from Pakistan, and we navigated the challenge pretty well. Because when India tested nuclear weapons in 98 at Pokhran, and Pakistan also responded with its nuclear tests, there was a lot of pressure on India Pakistan from the US, from then President Bill Clinton. During the Kargil conflict as well, Bill Clinton would pressurize Vajpayee to visit Washington, where he could meet Pakistani leadership and talk about the conflict. But Prime Minister Vajpayee put his foot down and refused to fall for that pressure. Eventually, when the 2003 ceasefire was worked out, it was again through US involvement and through US pressure that was brought on both India and Pakistan. Then from 2003 to 2008, there was something very, very interesting which happened. Something that the world doesn't know about. Between 2003 and 2008, there was back channel diplomacy that was opened between India and Pakistan. And now we know that the US was involved as well in this back channel diplomacy. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh would appoint a special envoy. He appointed a seasoned diplomat, a Pakistan expert, Satinder Lamba, as India's special envoy. And Pakistan, which was headed by Pervez Musharraf, also would appoint a special envoy. So secret back channel talks were taking place, which was known only to the leaders. None of them in the government were aware of these talks. And now it appears that the US was playing a role then as well, trying to push India-Pakistan towards a resolution. In fact, Bill Clinton had proposed this idea that the ceasefire line, which is LOC, should become the de facto international border as well. But India had initially rejected this idea. But as more maturity came in on both the sides of India Pakistan, we did make progress on this proposal to turn the LOC into the permanent IB, to turn this into some sort of a international border to ensure that we end the dispute. And this has been seen as the most viable practical solution by most experts as well. India Pakistan actually made a lot of progress through the back channel talks, and by 2008 it has been reported that Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf had come very, very close to the brink of a historic deal. Then what happened? 26/11 Mumbai attacks. And that was not a coincidence. Somewhere in the Pakistani establishment, the information leaked regarding the back channel talks, which the US was mediating between India and Pakistan. The deep state became aware that if they don't intervene, India Pakistan might very soon work out a historic deal which could possibly end these issues between the two countries. So they had to do something big, something which would rupture and break this relationship, push India to become hostile against Pakistan again. That is how the 26/11 Mumbai attacks happened. Even during parliament attacks, when Vajpayee government had launched Operation Parakram to mobilize the Indian armed forces, there was tremendous pressure from the US, and eventually the Vajpayee administration caved under that pressure. So previously, we have seen many, many instances where US has been trying to play a role. It's not just the US, even United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, they have been acting as mediators and back channel enablers. Recently, for example, the Modi government relied on UAE for secret back channel talks. Remember, after Pulwama and Balkot airstrikes, tensions were very high. And in 2021, India-Pakistan reiterated their commitment to the 2003 ceasefire. This was made possible because there was a secret back channel talk which was opened between the national security advisors, and UAE was acting as a mediator between the two. Now you would have seen how Saudi was playing a role during Operation Sindoor. Saudi leaders were visiting India and Pakistan, and reports confirm the Saudi involvement because they do have a stake in ensuring stability in the region. So no matter what India does, there will be some international pressure, there will be some third party involvement. But what we have done over the last at least 50 years, ever since Shimla Agreement of 1972, is that we've always managed to protect our core interests. We might take the help of international mediation only to tone down the tensions. Now, even during Operation Sindoor, there are some reports in global media, which are verified by some experts as well, that India also did reach out to US and other powers to help in toning down the tensions. It was not just Pakistan. India also would have made a back channel outreach so that there could be pressure on Pakistan as well. So India does need such kind of help, especially when tensions are extremely high. But what we don't need is their involvement in talking about Kashmir. We don't need their presence when we discuss Kashmir, because that would eventually enable Pakistan and its agenda to internationalize the Kashmir issue. In 2019, when India revoked the special status of J&K under Article 370, Pakistan and China colluded. They had a nexus and they brought up this issue at the UN, pushed for debates at the UN and Organization of Islamic Cooperation, bring pressure on India. But we managed to resist that pressure because of the friends we had at UN and OIC. So one thing is very clear. Any such foreign involvement without India's approval will work in the interest of Pakistan. In 2019, again, after Pulwama attacks, India carried out Balkot airstrikes. And one Indian pilot was caught, right? Wing Commander Abhinandan. Trump, even then, he had tweeted, after Abhinandan was returned back to India, he had tweeted claiming credit for the release of Abhinandan. He said it was Trump who brought pressure on Imran Khan. He said US was the one which forced Pakistan to release the Indian pilot. And thus he took away the credit from India itself. So Trump is known to do this, to claim credit for what he has not done, or at least to exaggerate, over exaggerate his own involvement and his role. This is something that we have seen from Trump. Now, we are in no position to verify whether India asked for US mediation, or did we reach out to them in some form or the other, or did India, Pakistan work this out on their own? But one thing is very clear. Going forward, India has to be quite cautious and careful. Of course, India knows where to draw the red line with US as well, right? India would never entertain any kind of direct US involvement. We do need help from US, Saudi, UAE, and others, especially when tensions are high, to tone down the tensions, or maybe just to enable the talks. But we don't want them to play the lead role in pushing the talks between India and Pakistan. So that is where I think India will redefine the red lines. India would already be preparing a response. We would be expecting a further push from the US, especially from Trump. Because please understand, Trump has become more and more desperate, because he had made tall claims that within 24 hours of coming to office, he said, I'll end Ukraine war. He said within days, I'll end Gaza war. But he has not been able to do that. So now India-Pakistan tensions has been an opportunity for him, right? So he would try to claim all the credit for that. He might even try to over-exaggerate it by saying there was a possibility of a nuclear war. This is where I think India should clarify its position as well, try to shape the narrative. And the all-party delegation which the government has been setting up, right, where 35 countries would be covered by Indian parliamentarians, taking India's message, India's narrative. I think that would play a big role in shaping international opinion about what happened in Pahalgam and post-Pahalgam. Is that clear? So this is, again, a developing story. I don't think this issue will end very soon, because Trump will try to milk this advantage. He will try to take advantage of this. So India will have to be more cautious and draw those red lines very clearly. To take up this question, India has always opposed internationalization of Kashmir issue. We have always opposed it. But every now and then we have seen global powers trying to interfere, trying to play a role. We do want them to assist in toning down tensions when tensions are really high. But apart from that, we don't want any help from them, be it on India-Pakistan bilateral issues or be it with regard to the Kashmir issue. As PM Modi said, but all we talk to Pakistan, the only thing we can talk about is terrorism and POK. Nothing else. There's no other issue to discuss with Pakistan. As simple as that. I think this is the position India will clarify to other countries, including the US. I think India will make this clear to US as well. If at all we are talking to Pakistan with your help, we'll discuss only two things: terrorism and POK, nothing else. If you want to help here, we are more than happy. Other than that, we are not going to discuss anything, especially on the Indian side of Kashmir. We are not going to discuss about it. Now, let's look at the next article. On page 14 itself, we have this article that refers to the demographic data, which was recently brought out through the Sample Registration System report, the SRS report, which is prepared by the Registrar General of India under Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, we have already covered this from a prelims perspective. Remember, I told you that the SRS report gives you data about mortality rates, fertility rates, and thus it provides very insightful demographic data, which is very useful for policymakers, especially with regard to healthcare policies, family planning initiatives, population control, population stabilization. These indicators are very, very crucial to also track our progress with regard to achieving the sustainable development goals. The data from SRS report is very, very critical. We spoke about the progress we have made with regard to total fertility rate. We spoke about the progress we have made with regard to maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate. I hope you guys remember this. Now, this article provides us an analysis, a very important analysis which could come as a mains question. See, we understood that our mortality rates, be it maternal mortality, infant mortality, neonatal mortality, all these rates are declining. We are on track to achieve our SDG targets by 2030, much before 2030. I also told you last time that many Indian states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, they've already achieved some of the targets with regard to maternal mortality and infant mortality. But the focus of this article here is the TFR of India, the total fertility rate. So, what is TFR? I've already explained TFR in the previous session, but if there are any beginners, those who didn't attend, I would like to repeat what is TFR. TFR, total fertility rate, is a measure of the fertility rate in the country. And how is it measured? It's essentially the average number of children a woman in the reproductive age group is going to have in her lifetime. So when we say reproductive age group, it refers to the age of 15 to 49 years, right? So in that age group, the average number of children a woman is having. Understood? So the average number of children a woman has during her reproductive age refers to TFR rate. Now, if the TFR is 2.1, this is known as replacement level fertility. Why is it called replacement level fertility? Because if TFR is 2.1, it basically means each couple are having 2 kids on an average. All right, on an average, each couple, a husband and wife, they're having 2 kids on an average, which means they are replacing themselves. Which means one generation is going to replace themselves with another subsequent generation. And this means your population will stabilize. Neither your population will grow and explode, nor will your population decline and drop. Population will remain stable at the same level, almost at the same level, if your TFR rate is 2.1, which is replacement level fertility. And this has been India's goal, India's target from many, many years. Since we started focusing on family planning measures and population stabilization measures in 1970s, the goal has been to achieve a TFR of 2.1, to achieve the replacement level fertility. Now, the good news for India is that thanks to all the efforts, the population control measures, the family planning measures, India's average TFR is now at 2. It is slightly less than replacement level fertility. Replacement level fertility is 2.1, but India's recorded TFR as of now on average, this is the national average, it is 2 as of now, and it has remained consistent over the last few years. So what does this tell you? It means India's population is stabilizing. So going forward in the next two to 3 decades, or even in the next 4 to 5 decades, we will not witness the same level of population explosion. Neither will our population decline and drop drastically. It will remain pretty stable for the next 40 to 50 years at least. But however, there is a deeper concern here. Just because we have achieved replacement level fertility and we are close to the number of 2.1, don't think India is safe. There is a deeper concern which has come up, and the SRS report is highlighting that concern. The concern is that there is a lot of regional variation from state to state when it comes to TFR. There are two extremes which is basically coming up in our country. On one side, there is an extreme where TFR is as high as 3, which means on an average, a couple are having 3 kids even now in states like Bihar, even states like Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. These 6 states have been flagged in the report by the government. They are having very high TFR rates in the range of 2.5 to 3, which means they will continue to witness the population rise and possibly a population explosion as well. Why? Because these governments have failed in implementing the family planning programs and stabilizing their population. There are other states which have performed well. States like Kerala, West Bengal, even Delhi, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat as well. Many other states, they've all performed well, and many of them have already achieved replacement level fertility. But the concern in some states is that their TFR is dropping to alarming levels. There's another indicator which is measured, a related indicator. It's known as the crude birth rate, CBR. This data is also captured by this report. What is CBR? CBR is the number of live births per thousand population, which means you take a sample set of 1,000 people, right? The number of kids they are having on an average, the number of live births reported per thousand population. This is another indicator called CBR, crude birth rate. Now, CBR is declining very drastically in some states like Kerala. In fact, most of India is reporting a big decline in CBR rates except for Uttarakhand, which means the births which were happening, let's say 20 years ago, they are not happening anymore. Now, let me tell you the other extreme example. Sikkim. You'll be shocked with Sikkim's TFR. Sikkim has a TFR of 1. It has started going below 1. What does that mean? It means that couples in Sikkim, they are at the maximum having 1 kid on an average, or many couples are choosing not to have children. This trend is being observed in many urban areas as well. Now, Sikkim, with a TFR of below 1, is comparable with South Korea. South Korea also has a TFR of below 1. You know what happens when TFR drops below 1 or reaches 1? Essentially, it means the population is going to drop off quite significantly. There will be a tipping point where your aged population will increase and it will jump significantly, and the younger population will drop off significantly. That's why countries like Japan, countries like South Korea, countries like Italy, they are dealing with a massive demographic problem on the other extreme. If high population is one problem, low population, low fertility rate, aging population is another set of problem. Tomorrow, this will reduce the workforce available. It will increase the burden on the state, on the society, as more old age people will be present, who need care from the state and from the society. So this becomes a serious economic challenge, a social challenge. So countries like Japan are dealing with it. Italy is dealing with it. South Korea is dealing with it. Taiwan as well. They are struggling to address the dropping population rates. So this is a more modern trend as well. Given the rising expenses, right? And the cost of bearing a child, raising a child, it has become extremely expensive even for a middle class couple to have a kid and raise a child. Several couples are opting not to have children at all, right? And if at all they have kids, they have just one child, which eventually brings down the crude birth rate, brings down the TFR. And as we approach the TFR of 1 on an average, you will start seeing a big drop off in your population numbers, right? Plus, the environmental factors are playing a role. Fertility rates in general are dropping. So this represents a serious concern for policymakers in the country. There are different extremes in our country. At the national level, everything appears fine. TFR at 2 is perfect for India. But regionally, there are a lot of variations. Bihar has a TFR of 3. Sikkim, right next to it, has a TFR of less than 1. How do you deal with this? Kerala is seeing a massive drop off. There are states where population remains stable, but there are states where it appears to be declining. There are states where it appears to be exploding. So how do we deal with these regional variations in fertility? So this will present a unique challenge going forward. Few states will witness depopulation very soon. Mark my words, 30 years from now, few states will be on the path of depopulation, meaning their population will start dropping. There will be other states where population will start increasing, or at least it will remain stable as it is now. So this could bring up many, many complicated challenges. It could create a lack of workforce, right? Or it could lead to differences between the states of India, where states with more population will get rewarded with more seats, more financial allocation. States with lesser population could be at the receiving end. So, how will India manage this demographic divide which is coming up? Right? The regional variations are turning into a demographic divide in our country. From state to state, region to region, big variations are coming up. And that is the big challenge for India. That's why I said this data is very important. The SRS report, it's very insightful. It tells you about the future of a nation, the future population profile of a nation. Next, on page 9, we have an important article here. Very small article. Let's not take too much time on this. We have seen repeated incursions by Pakistani drones dropping contraband onto the Indian side. See, this is not a new phenomenon. It's been happening from at least more than 5 years. Pakistan has been repeatedly using toy drones from China, especially the DJI Mavic variant, which is not very cheap. It's quite expensive. But compared to other means of trafficking and smuggling, using these cheap Chinese toy drones is any day cost effective. So Pakistani deep state actors, such as its intelligence agency ISI, it is working with organized criminal cartels and terror syndicates to smuggle contraband. Contraband is nothing but illegal banned substances which are being smuggled, trafficked into our country. So even during the tensions recently, even when Operation Sindoor was going on, and even after the ceasefire, we have seen repeated incursions by these drones, and they are dropping explosives, they are dropping weapons, and more importantly, they are dropping drugs on the Indian side at places like Firozpur, Gurdaspur in Punjab, very close to the Pakistani border. The BSF, which is the border guarding force along the Pakistani border, has recovered many such drones. It has taken down many drones as well. The question is, these consignments which are coming, right? It's been coming from a long time, as I told you. Like last year, for example, in 2024, more than 260 such drones were detected and spotted. So the point is, who will receive these consignments on the Indian side? Obviously, there must be someone who will collect the consignment because guns are being sent, not just pistols. Even automatic rifles have been dropped. IED, all the materials needed to build a IED have been sent through drones. Be it the explosive needed, the detonators, the IED circuit, everything has been sent. You just have to assemble it into a bomb. Grenades have been sent. Drugs, kilograms of drugs are being sent. Heroin, hashish, marijuana. The point is, who is collecting the contraband? There have been instances where money has been recovered as well. Cash, usually fake Indian currency notes, FICNs have been recovered. Since most of the droppings are happening in Punjab sector, the suspicion is that the pro-Pakistani Khalistani elements who are backed by the ISI might be the recipients of these weapons, explosives, drugs, and money. This is what we saw in the 70s and 80s. Back in 1980s, at the peak of Khalistan movement, Pakistan was blatantly smuggling drugs and weapons and funds into India. It basically fueled the Khalistan movement against India. But then, of course, it was through the traditional route by using smugglers, through the smuggling routes. But now it has become more sophisticated, easier. These toy drones are being flown across the border. They will drop the package and they'll return back. So this poses a new security challenge for India. As I said, these drone incursions have been reported even after Operation Sindoor, when Operation Sindoor was still going on, even on 8th of May, 9th of May, 10th of May, even after the ceasefire in the last 3-4 days. Repeated drone incursions have been reported. BSF has recovered, shot down some of them and recovered the contraband. And we have discovered that they were trying to drop explosives, grenades, guns, drugs, which means someone would be waiting to collect this on the Indian side. Now, the point would be to track down who are these elements for whom these consignments were being sent. It was not just a random drop off, right? There must be some operatives, either ISI operatives who are essentially intelligence operatives, or those who are recruited by the ISI, or maybe Khalistani elements or terror sleeper modules which are active. So that is the security challenge that is present. And the security agencies, intelligence agencies, have to crack down on any such modules which might be operating. Next, we have this article on page 9, which refers to the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial. Please make a note of this. Very important topic for prelims, even for mains. The UN Peacekeeping Ministerial was recently held in Berlin, Germany. Germany hosted a conference of UN peacekeeping forces and UN peacekeeping missions. I'm sure all of you are aware of the UN peacekeeping missions, right? These UN peacekeepers, the peacekeeping forces, they're also called blue helmets because of the blue gear that they wear. So they're deployed in conflict zones around the world, not to engage in combat. It's a non-combat role, It's a peacekeeping role in which they are deployed, essentially to maintain ceasefire, to achieve normalcy in a conflict zone, to facilitate a transition towards elections, to protect the civilians in a conflict area. That is the primary mandate of the Blue Helmets. So, across Africa and many other conflict zones, UN peacekeepers are deployed. And India has been one of the largest contributing nations. These countries which contribute troops, they're called Troop Contributing Countries, TCC. So, over the last 7 decades, India has contributed roughly 2 lakh troops from the armed forces, from border guarding forces, the paramilitary, the CAPFs, even from the police forces. We have deployed many contingents, including an all women contingent across conflict zones in Africa. Out of the 2 lakh plus troops that India has deployed for UN peacekeeping missions, at least 180 approximately have been killed during peacekeeping missions, which means India has made the biggest sacrifice compared to any other country. So this ministerial, the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial, it takes stock of the peacekeeping missions and gives an opportunity for troop contributing countries to raise their voice, to raise their concerns. See, India has one major concern with peacekeeping missions. The problem is that the peacekeeping forces are under the control of the UN Security Council because UNSC has the mandate to maintain peace and security under the UN Charter. So, as per the UN Charter, UNSC has control over peacekeeping forces, which means the P5 countries are deciding as to where peacekeeping missions will be launched, in which conflict zone, where the peacekeeping troops will be deployed. So, their overall safety, their well being, everything is in the hands of the P5 countries, the 5 permanent members of UNSC who have the veto power. Even though countries like India, Kenya, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, these are the major troop contributing nations, we have no decision making power. We can't decide in which conflict the peacekeepers will be deployed. We can't decide the safety of the peacekeepers. We can't hold those who commit crimes against peacekeepers accountable. Because there have been conflicts where peacekeepers have been targeted, either by rebel forces or by the government forces, and peacekeepers have been killed. India has lost 180 plus. Recently, in Democratic Republic of Congo, 2 BSF Jawans were killed by a rebel faction. Nobody was held accountable for it. Now, India has a very valid point in our push for UN reforms. As we are seeking a permanent seat at UNSC, another demand from India with regard to UN reforms is to ensure that troop contributing countries are also given a say in the decision making related to UN peacekeeping forces. This is a point India has reiterated at the ministerial conference as well. Germany has backed India's position as the host because India, Germany, we are part of a group called G4, which is pushing for reforms of the UN. India, Germany, along with Japan and Brazil, these 4 countries, they have an informal group called G4, which are basically pressing for reforms of the UN. They are all seeking a permanent seat at UNSC. So Germany has backed India's position that troop contributing countries should have a say with regard to the control over peacekeeping forces and ensuring that peacekeepers are kept safe. That's why India has founded an initiative known as Group of Friends Initiative. In 2022, India established the Group of Friends Initiative by passing a resolution, Resolution 2589, at the UNSC. When India was part of UNSC a couple of years ago, right, we held a non-permanent seat from 2021 to 2022. That was the 8th term of India as a UNSC member, non-permanent member. So we pushed Resolution 2589, which calls for safety and protection of peacekeepers. And based on this, we set up this initiative, Group of Friends Initiative, which is supported by Bangladesh, supported by France, Nepal, and other countries, which are all involved in peacekeeping efforts. So India has been pushing this issue in trying to ensure the safety of the peacekeepers, and that's the prime issue which was discussed at the peacekeeping ministerial. But India has also reiterated its commitment to be involved in peacekeeping missions going ahead. We also provide training. Indian forces, which have incredible experience in peacekeeping missions, we provide training to other countries. We train the peacekeepers of the UN, right? And this is part of our military exercises as well with our friendly partners. So India has reiterated that commitment that we'll always remain committed to the cause. We will provide training to others. We will deploy our troops as well. But only thing we want is we should also play a decision-making role with regard to the deployment and safety of our peacekeepers. Next, another important article here. This is talking about the impact of war, the economic cost of war, economic impact of military conflicts and tensions. Now, see, given the tensions between India Pakistan after the Pelgam attack, India's Operation Sindoor, the conflict which escalated, now there might be a ceasefire, but India will have to prepare for any eventuality, any future consequences. The defense forces have already raised an emergency demand to step up defense acquisition because obviously there would be some lessons learned from Operation Sindoor. There would be a need to plug our own gaps. There would be a need to improve our preparedness, procure certain critical weapon platforms and components, which could be necessary for India's preparedness against Pakistan and China. The Defense Ministry is already preparing a proposal that could cost an additional 50,000 crore in this year's fiscal budget. As part of the supplementary grants, which will be submitted very soon, the defense forces under the defense ministry are planning to raise a fresh demand for 50,000 crores in emergency funding, which is needed for emergency purchases for the army, navy, air force, and the others. Now, this cost, right? It's very common, especially after a war or during the war, right? Or during periods of tensions. We've always seen that the demand for defense expenditure increases. It's natural. It happens everywhere in the world. Now, the point is, can Indian economy bear that burden? Can Indian economy take that additional burden without compromising on its fiscal deficit target? See, maintaining fiscal discipline is very critical for the overall macroeconomic health. Right now, India's fiscal deficit target is 4.4%. That's a target which the government has set for itself as per the provisions of the FRBM Act. So, a sudden jump in defense expenditure, that too by 50,000 crores, which is very significant, it could potentially derail our fiscal consolidation. It could increase our fiscal deficit, possibly. So, how does India plan to manage the jump in defense expenditure, which is going to come up now? The article says that luckily India has many options. One, the low oil prices right now is working to India's advantage, especially the cheaper Russian oil that we are buying. Right? It has reduced our import bill, which means government expenses have gone down quite significantly. Our import bill has gone down because of low oil prices. And the RBI is sitting on a massive surplus, a profit, which is going to be shared with the government very soon as a huge dividend, which we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, remember, I explained this topic. The RBI and Finance Ministry, they are taking a relook at the recommendations of Bimal Jalan Committee on the economic capital framework. They are checking if we can reduce the contingent risk buffer, which is now at 5.5 to 6.5%. If this risk buffer can be reduced to, let's say, 4.5%, the additional profit which RBI generates can be transferred to the government as a surplus. The dividend flow will increase, and it's expected the government can get easily anywhere between 1 lakh crores to 3 lakh crore rupees because of the dividend. This will address the increased demand. The shortfall can be easily managed without much impact on our fiscal consolidation. Experts are anticipating a 0.14% negative impact on our GDP because of the conflict, because of Operation Sindoor and the upcoming defense modernization, which is going to happen. The expected economic impact would be a negative 0.14% on India's GDP. So right now we are in a good position. We can still manage this slight jump in demand because see, this was not a war. It was a limited conflict, and hence India is able to manage this. But during times of war, if it is a full-fledged war, then managing the expenses, limiting the impact of the war on your economy becomes even more difficult and even more challenging. Now, if you look at the past, this graph actually provides a very interesting insight. Can you see this here during 1970 to 72? How our expenses, how India's fiscal deficit was varying during the conflict period. Right before the 1971 war, our defense expenses started rising as India was preparing for the conflict. During 1971, during the war, of course, our expenses went up and fiscal deficit also shot up. We couldn't match the fiscal deficit. In 1972 as well, we spent more because after the war, there was a need to replenish the armed forces and ensure that we carry out essential emergency procurement. So, for 2 to 3 years, we went off track with regard to our fiscal discipline. But after that, India managed quite well. Just look at from 1973-75, we brought back the fiscal discipline very soon by toning down the expenses, by increasing revenue. India managed to bring down the fiscal deficit and we consolidated the path. We saw the same during Kargil War. In 1999, our expenses shot up, fiscal deficit was off track. But by 2000-2001, we were back on track. So this is a clear reflection of India's professional economic management. Of course, during times of war and conflict, expenses will shoot up. Before the war, during the war, and post war, definitely expenses will shoot up. And when you try to plug the gap, there will be a fiscal deficit naturally. But immediately after that, we have always seen a trend where India responsibly manages the fiscal deficit and puts the economy back on the path of fiscal consolidation. But see, after 2611 and after Pulwama, the cases were different. You can't compare those two cases, those were unique cases. Because during 2611 attacks, though India stepped up its defense and security expenditure, and we did deviate big time from the fiscal path. Why? Because there was a global economic recession as well that was happening parallelly in 2008-2009. So the deficit which came up was not because of India's increased defense security expenditure. It was because of the economic crisis where India had to spend more to boost and revive growth. We saw this during Pulwama and COVID as well. After Pulwama Balkot airstrikes, defense expenses shot up, right? And fiscal deficit, it became ballooned basically. But that was not because of the increased defense expenditure. That was because of COVID-19, which happened later. The pandemic led to the government spending more, and we were off the track with regard to fiscal consolidation. That's why I said these two are exceptional cases. But in every other instance, you take parliament attacks as well, Operation Parakram. India's expenses shot up for that year, but within 1 year, we brought back the fiscal discipline. We could manage the finances. That tells you a lot about India's economic management, which has been managed very professionally, thoroughly, and we've always remained committed to the path of fiscal management, fiscal consolidation. So even now, maybe this year and next year, we will see increased defense expenditure. There will be some impact on our GDP. There will be some impact on fiscal deficit, but we should be able to contain it and manage it. Because there are other sources. Government can collect more revenue as well, maybe through some levies and taxes. As I said, it can seek more dividends from the RBI by making changes to the economic capital framework of RBI. We should take benefit of the low oil prices. So there are many avenues available for us to bring that extra money to ensure that we offset the increase in defense expenses. Now, coming to the last part of today's discussion, the prelim section. We have few small articles. Let's take a quick look. On the front page, the Hindu carries this image of PSLV C61, the 63rd mission of PSLV. ISRO had kept a lot of hope and ambition on this. India's security establishment, our intelligence and security forces were eagerly waiting for this launch. Why? Because the payload was critical. PSLV C61 was carrying Earth Observation Satellite number 9, also known as RISAT 1B. The RISAT is a very unique satellite that has been developed by ISRO and launched by ISRO. It's a series of satellites. This satellite, it carries a unique payload known as a synthetic aperture radar. It's essentially an Earth observation satellite. Usually Earth observation satellites, they make use of optical instruments to capture high resolution images of the Earth. And why do we use Earth observation satellites? We use it for civilian and also for military purposes. You need high resolution pictures for urban planning, for any large projects which are going to be constructed. You need it for disaster management, for resource mapping. But the same high resolution images, the military grade images, can be used for border security, to check infiltration, to track enemy movement during times of war and conflict. So these satellites are clearly dual purpose satellites. But problem with regular Earth observation satellite is that optical instruments do not take pictures all the time. First of all, the orbit has to be aligned. It's not that you'll always have a satellite over the area that you need. You have to wait for some time for the satellite to move over a desired area. Then Optical instruments can't capture good images when there is cloud cover. Optical instruments don't capture good images during night. These are limitations of Earth observation satellites. So we do have these Earth observation satellites such as the Cartosat, ResourceSat, etc. They do serve a civilian military purpose, but they have some limitations because of the optical instrument. Now, in RISAT, which was jointly developed by India and Israel, RISAT initially was a joint India-Israeli project. The synthetic aperture radar that was developed replaced the optical instruments. Synthetic aperture radars, they make use of electromagnetic waves to capture the image. They don't rely on light. So even if there is complete cloud cover or even during night time, a synthetic aperture radar can capture extremely high resolution images, which is useful not only for civilian purposes for administration and planning, but can be critical in disaster management and more importantly for national security purposes. That's why it's called as eye in the sky. So RISAT is deployed in a sun synchronous polar orbit, giving you ample coverage. We already have a RISAT in orbit, the RISAT 2B series of satellites that were launched previously. Now we were gearing up for RISAT 1B, which would have added to our surveillance capabilities and Earth observation capabilities. But unfortunately, today morning, we have received reports just before the session. I was going through updates from ISRO. Unfortunately, this critical mission has failed. The PSLV, which is a reliable workhorse, which has repeatedly delivered success for ISRO, has unfortunately failed. According to initial reports, the third stage most probably did not ignite properly. It did not give the required thrust to place the satellite in the desired orbit. And as a result, the mission has failed. Most likely, we will lose the satellite as well. And this comes as a big setback for ISRO and a big setback for India's security establishment. Given the recent tensions with Pakistan and China, we were eagerly looking forward to this Earth observation satellite, which gives us 24/7 surveillance on desired target areas. And the best feature of this satellite was it would leave zero space debris. It was built with inbuilt functions and features to deorbit itself after the mission. Each and every component would be deorbited, and eventually, after the satellite decays, retires, after it becomes dysfunctional, it had an inbuilt feature and a function to deorbit itself back to Earth, thus leaving no space debris behind. So this would have been a clean, sustainable mission as well. But unfortunately, things have gone wrong due to a technical error in the third stage of the rocket. Most likely, the desired orbit was not achieved, and the entire mission has failed. Next, Prime Minister Modi will be launching a revamped version of the National Manuscripts Mission on the 9th of June. So, what is the National Manuscripts Mission? See, this mission was initially launched back in 2003 under the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. Manuscripts are essentially documents, written documents, or inscriptions that date back to hundreds of years, thousands of years ago. They are rich sources of archaeological evidence, historical evidence that helps us understand our history. So there are lakhs of manuscripts present in our museums, libraries, academic institutions with researchers and collectors. These manuscripts are very delicate, right? They would have survived for hundreds of years, braving the natural elements. And if you don't preserve and conserve them, you are going to lose the historical manuscripts eventually, right? They could get damaged, they could get torn, they could get burnt. So there is a need to conserve the manuscripts by digitizing them. You scan all the manuscripts, digitize them, upload them on a central database, and make it available for historians and researchers. So that mission was launched in 2003, but it has seen very little progress over the years. It has not received adequate funding. Until recently, the funding given to this mission was just 3.5 crore rupees. With this limited budget, the Ministry of Culture, which implements this mission, the Ministry of Culture, it had got a few lakh documents digitized, but most of them have not been archived and uploaded. At least the digitization has been done of certain documents, but they have not been archived and uploaded. So this important mission is being rejuvenated by the Modi government because in this year's budget, a substantial allocation was made. From the regular 3.5 crores, we saw a big jump to 60 crore rupees for this fiscal. So Ministry of Culture now has the required financial resources to strengthen this organization, the National Manuscript Mission under the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, to digitize all the manuscripts in the country and ensure that we archive them, we categorize them, store them properly, create a central database so that we conserve these manuscripts, which are of great historical archaeological value. That is what you need to know about the Manuscripts Mission. Now, coming to the last article on page 11, I found a very interesting article related to society, related to indigenous tribal communities. This article is referring to the Kandha tribal belt. Kandha essentially is a reference to the Kond. Remember, recently we spoke about the Dogriya Kond in Odisha, in the Niyamgiri hill ranges. So this article refers to the same community, the Kandha community, which is particularly found in Kandhamal region of Odisha. Now, this article is interesting because it talks about a traditional practice amongst women in the Kandha tribe. So, what the women do is that they decorate their faces with these permanent tattoos. Can you see the image of the women here? Can you see the markings on their face? These geometric patterns of lines, circles, boxes, triangles. Now, these are permanent tattoos which are given to them when they are a young girl. As soon as they turn 10 years of age, their face is completely tattooed by the other women in the group. Now, why do they do this? Is it only for ornamental value and purpose? The answer is no. More than being an ornamental, decorative tattoo, this is meant mainly to serve as a protection for the girl. When the girl matures and starts growing into her adolescent and adulthood, she could be subjected to sexual exploitation by the landlords, by the male members of the tribe, or by rivals. So, to protect women, to make them appear less attractive, this has been a age-old traditional practice in the Kandha tribe. From centuries, the women have practiced this. As soon as a girl turns 10 years of age, they deface her body and face by these tattoos to make her appear less attractive. See, whether it's effective or not, that's a different argument altogether. Is this the right approach? That's a different argument altogether. But this has been an ancient, traditional, indigenous practice. All right. But today, tattooing has become more of ornamental because today, girls of the tribe, they go out to schools, they go out to study. Many of them don't follow these traditions as well. But historically, that has been the purpose. Imagine if a woman had to go through that, the pain of a permanent tattoo on the face, just to appear unattractive so that they could be protected from sexual violence and sexual exploitation. That tells you a lot about the challenges that women face in society, right? They also wear a very distinct earring, which you can see in the image as well, which is a tribal marker. It's a marker of their identity. So the tattoo as well, it's a identity marker as well today. Today, it no longer serves the original purpose. Today, it's more ornamental, decorative, and it has become a marker of the identity of the Kond tribe. So I've given the important points over here in a screenshot. We've discussed this just a few days back. Please go through this. The Konds or the Konda or the Kanda, as they are referred to, they belong to an indigenous Dravidian, indigenous tribal community. They were essentially hunter-gatherers at one point. Later, they shifted to basic agriculture, right? Slash and burn agriculture, which is called the Kui. And they practice the Kui language, which is linked with the Dravidian set of languages. Please go through these basic points, which we studied recently as well. And that should be it for today. So I hope you guys have understood all the key topics today. 9 articles, along with many subtopics with a detailed analysis and the facts. This completes today's discussion. You don't have to read the newspaper again. If you understood everything, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, and also let me know in the comments. And let's meet tomorrow. Till then, take care. Have a good day.